as we outlined a bit earlier with Rodrigo Duterte. The Duterte meeting is by and away the most interesting meeting that we're going to be looking for. And as we mentioned, whether he publicly condemns what has been a relatively popular campaign here in the Philippines. It's worth mentioning President Duterte's approval ratings have been at 80% at some points. They're now down around 60, but the fact is the majority of the public here does support his war on drugs. So it will be interesting to see how President Trump responds to that. But, you know, it's not just about the war on drugs. You also have to consider trade. What's happened since Donald Trump and his administration came into office, one of the first things they did was pull out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and that included countries here in Southeast Asia. And so how that affects, you know, what Donald Trump will try and do when he's here is make sure that American economic influence remains a force to be reckoned with here in this part of the world, especially as China seemingly has stepped up and filled that vacuum, trying to negotiate other multilateral trade agreements that do not include the United States. And so really those are the two things we're going to be looking for. How does President Trump handle his meeting with Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte, and also how successful will he be in making sure that American economic influence remains as high in this part of the world as it has in years past?
Yeah, you mentioned the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and just this weekend, that partnership without the U.S. Has continued to move forward. You have on your screen Rodrigo Duterte, the president of the Philippines, arriving with the First Lady, shaking hands with the President of the United States.
And sitting down to dinner. As we know, as he said, they're going to be meeting tomorrow, and the big question is, will they bring up human rights, the war on drugs, that so many human rights groups, U.S. Congress, the EU, the United Nations have all condemned Duterte's war on drugs. You are looking at a man there who is accused of killing between 6,000 and 10,000 people, or having them killed, because they were either drug dealers, he says, or because they were on drugs. And this 10,000 figure just since he was elected last year. I believe he's going to speak here. Let's listen in.
Fellow leaders of ASEAN member states and dialogue partners, President Trump, Prime Minister Medvedev, former Presidents Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo and Fidel Ramos. Sir, good evening. Senate President Aquilino Pimentel III and the other members of the Senate present, ASEAN Secretary General Liu Leong Mi, distinguished members of the Diplomatic Corps, Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano and the other members of the Cabinet present, distinguished guests, members of the House of Representatives, other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to Manila for the 31st ASEAN Summit and related summits. I am deeply honored to host this rare occasion when a number of the world leaders gathered here in celebration of the 50th anniversary of ASEAN. Last week, the world witnessed and joined us in paying tribute to the golden anniversary of the founding of the association. Tonight, likewise, President, we commemorate, the community gains that ASEAN has achieved over the years under your leadership. The two former presidents here, particularly their work and efforts towards the realization of the rules-based people-oriented community. Throughout our chairmanship of ASEAN in 2017, the Philippines has been guided by the theme, Partnering for Change, Engaging the World, which captures the ASEAN resolve to effect positive change in the lives of our people and assert our position in the global economy. Beyond the regional borders, we ASEAN citizens are steadfast in building an ASEAN community that is united by shared history, values, and aspirations. We continue to harmonize the three pillars of ASEAN community by strengthening economic integration and building a common identity while embracing our uniqueness and diversity. ASEAN countries continue to engage the world. From its founding, we have established the meaningful and constructive engagements with external partners anchored on ASEAN centrality. As one of the founding members of ASEAN, the Philippines has witnessed and contributed to the development of ASEAN in the dynamic organization that is now. I look forward to having constructive and substantive discussions with you, Your Majesty, and Your Excellencies.
Listening in with us here, but you are listening there to the President of the Philippines, if you're just joining us, President Duterte, as he greets everyone to the ASEAN dinner that you're seeing there. Interesting, he said the theme is partnering for change. Change is certainly something that many people are looking for from this president, this man you see standing there, Matt Rivers. What is the hope for President Trump, and not just for President Trump, but for other leaders who are there, as to what they can accomplish at this meeting overall, as they all give a toast here?
You know, sure. I mean, generally speaking, this is like a lot of other summits that we see around the world, and that the criticism of it, and that it doesn't really accomplish a lot of tangible things, just like the criticism of the G7, of the G20. All these leaders get together, they take a photo op, they make for a couple bilateral meetings, and then they all go home. That's the criticism of this, but there is something to be said about the fact that there are personal relationships that are created between these leaders that can come in handy during times of crisis. But, you know, specifically looking at Rodrigo Duterte there, and part of the reason why it's so interesting to hear him speak is because he stayed on script, and he's similar to President Trump in the sense that he's very well known for going off script. And in a way, President Duterte makes Donald Trump look like an amateur in terms of going off script. Some of the things that we have heard out of the Philippine president make what the President Trump says look rather tame. I mean, it was just a couple days ago that the president of the Philippines claimed that he murdered someone by stabbing them when he was 16 years old. Last year around this time, he referred to President Obama using a curse word that was in a public forum, and he does that all the time, speaking about a wide range of things. He criticizes anyone who dares criticize him for the drug war that he's undertaken in this country. And so to see him stay on script there, stay on message, very interesting. How he goes into that meeting with President Trump tomorrow, certainly the most interesting part of tomorrow's festivities.
Yeah, as we see them conversing now here, one of the other things he said that really caught a lot of people off guard last year, September 2006, he said Hitler massacred 3 million Jews. Now there's 3 million drug addicts in the Philippines. I'd be happy to slaughter them. Yeah. So speaking off the cuff, certainly you never quite know what you're going to get from Duterte.
Matt Rivers there in Manila, thank you so much. And as that shot went down intentionally, we'll tell you, as they continue to have dinner here, no coincidence that President Trump was sat directly next to President Duterte. Same setup for the class photo just a few moments ago. We will continue with our coverage in just a moment. Stay with us here on New Day.